Hello! So, it's been a week since I've actually put anything out, both on this channel and on my other channel. It's been slightly over a week, in fact. And that's because I've been depressed! Yay! Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, I mean, your dad just died. It's fine to be depressed. It's perfectly acceptable. And while it may be true that my dad has died very recently, that's not it. The thing is that what's going on here is I'm depressive, so I'm depressed. In fact, my dad's death has actually made me numb rather than depressed. So, although I wasn't feeling any positive feelings, the fact I wasn't feeling any negative feelings means I've actually been doing pretty well with my dad's death. Because of this nothingness is actually much better than the general negativeness that I'm stuck with. It's the fact that I'm a depressive that I'd like to talk to you more about. So I've been a depressive for a long time. Probably, I'd say, since I hit puberty, so about 13 or so. And so from then up until today, so that's 11 years, I'd probably say I've had something between a year and a half worth of non-depressive time, if you condensed it all up together, though it's all been in drips and drabs. I think I had about 6 months at one point, but other than that, all in drips and drabs. Now, I don't want you to think that this means that I've been suicidal all the time. I haven't. That's sort of at 11, and I really haven't been at 11 very much at all. You know, I had one occasion that I can think of where I really managed to hit that point. Light our darkest hour. What is depression to me? Well, for me, I consider it to be happiness blindness. Now, there are many different types of depression out there, so I'm going to explain what it's not first of all, just to sort of, you know, make sure that we don't get confused. I might not necessarily be using the right terminology because I'm no expert at this. I'm only an expert on me. I'm actually an expert on a lot more things than me, but me is the main point that I'm very good at. Anyway, so it's not depressed as in just feeling unhappy. There's a very big difference between being unhappy and being depressed. I like to think of it more in Newtonian ways. If we think of this as an emotional scale, and happiness is up here, and sadness is down here, that for me the way that the way that a normal person works is like if something was just floating in space, so that when they get happy, and when they get sad. I suppose there's some drifting slowly towards the middle, which perhaps doesn't get covered in this, but for the most part, if you're happy, you stay happy until something makes you sad, and the opposite's true. Whereas living with depression is gravity. You might have small moments of happiness, but you're always going to come down very quickly and hit the floor. And that is exactly sort of where I class the difference is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're right at the bottom when you're depressed. What it means is that you won't be staying in that happy state for long, and you're having to fight to get there. I'm also not bipolar, which is the sort of depression where you have some periods where you're really happy and some periods where you're really sad, known as manic depression. I have almost no experience with this. In fact, I'd even say I'd had no experience with this. So sorry if I've got any bipolar friends and I've just never picked up on it. But I have nothing to say about this other than that's not what I am. And that leaves us with the third type of depression, which is my kind of depression, which is Dementor depression. Yes, this is the sort of depression that J.K. Rowling also suffered from, as far as I can understand. This is what she based the Dementors in Harry Potter on. Like I said, I call it happiness blindness, but as you can see, Dementors who suck the happiness out of a room is very much the same thing, and that's what it happens. Unfortunately, the solution isn't just eat some chocolate. But it does give you a nice sort of general baseline from where I'm going to move forward onto. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to mention something briefly about trying to spot depression, because often myself and lots of people I know who are also depressed, when they actually come out and reach out for some help, often there's a response of, well, you don't look depressed, or, oh, you'll get over it. And this is something that I think is very much true, and it's actually as much our fault as it is other people's. As it turns out that one of the things that we're really good at as depressives is, it's sort of undercover secret agents. What happens is we're all very good at hiding our depression. And it's not necessarily something that's conscious. the fact that someone's hiding their depression from you doesn't mean that they're actively trying to stop you from helping them. It's just something that, in society, someone smiles at you, you smile back at them. And because you create this mask, it means that it becomes very hard to spot. But then, because you're wearing a mask, it means that when you start talking to that person, you don't realise that this guy who's got a nice big smile is actually very depressed, and that's just a standard response to trying to be happy. Remember, as I said before with the gravity example, that you can be happy. These are people who will laugh and they will put on a smile, but as soon as you're looking away, as soon as they aren't being active, as soon as they get home, this is going to slide again and they're going to be back to being miserable. So if someone does come out and say, I'm depressed, give them the benefit of the doubt and allow for the fact that they are hiding. And it's almost human nature more than it is them actually trying to hide. So don't ever be offended by that. But it is something that's happening, and no one, and I do pretty much mean no one, I mean, you pretty much have to be at the near suicidal level to actually act depressively in front of someone, and you never want it to get to that state. So if anyone reaches out to you slightly above that state, you probably won't be able to tell it from looking at them, but just be aware that there's a lot more damage going on underneath. The mask itself can sometimes be a good thing. It has a tendency when you're out in public to numb how things are going, which if you are on a big decline emotionally can actually really help with things. However, you shouldn't necessarily try and force people to be out with other people and to put on their mask, because if they're actually starting to turn things around by themselves, this will also put a stop to that, which can lead back to a decline afterwards. So there are times when this can be helpful and times when this can be bad. So what's it actually like to be depressed? Well, the thing is it's actually quite livable, so long as you're not right up at the really extremes, which if you've got it for a long period of time, most people don't. Most people who have it for these long periods of times have it at sort of, a varying between sort of levels from about 2 to 5, I would say. Very rarely are you right at that extreme. Yeah, like I said, you can live with it. You can get things through things. The problem is, like I said, it's happiness blindness. It's exactly what you expect that to be. So you become hypercritical of things, particularly things about yourself. So obviously you're going to see yourself, you can't see your positive traits, you only see yourself as bad things. You can't look at your day and go, well, that was an okay day, I got through that. You will see the 5 things that you did wrong, even if the rest of the day went fine. And it's very much like if you wrote a list of good things and a list of bad things on either side of a page, and then your good things, you just slid the font down to varying degrees, depending on how strong your depression is on that day, and then you balanced up what had happened, and you'd clearly see that some days you just hadn't, you always feel like you've done nowhere near as much good as you have bad, or sometimes just can't see the good list at all. You just make the list of what went wrong, and that is, well, to an extent what happened. Now, luckily there are things that aren't on the list that can help you actually function with this, particularly things connected to duty or things that you feel like are necessities. You can get through. For example, myself and my dad, who also suffered from depression, both had very much we could get out of bed, particularly if we needed to work, because we had this thing of what you do is you get up, you get dressed and you go to work. And so when we had those systems in place, we could get to work and we could spend a day at work, whereas in a day on a weekend, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get dressed or get out of bed because you don't have that same this is what I have to do level, and that sort of honour and truth can be something that they can't take away from you. Again, going back, it's like Sirius Black can hold on to the truth because it's not a happy feeling, it's just a fact. However, that completely varies from person to person, and I have not yet worked out how to break that programming. I've never been able to quite get that commitment and duty to switch over to things that I'm doing for myself or things like that, or little projects. Clearly, I've just spent 10 days not making videos because because I still see that a little bit more as something I'm doing for me rather than things I'm doing for other people or for the business. That having been said, those are some of the things that have managed to help me pull myself out of this, is going on the fact that there's you guys and you guys want videos, and I have said we're going to make videos for you, and the fact that, you know, me and Dan now run a business and that I'm putting a lot of pressure on Dan by, for a week, pretty much doing nothing, which is something that which I don't do at university or other things, and I'm very sorry, Dan, if you're watching this. And it is just that knock-on effect of getting things in the right places, and I'm sorry, but I have no tips on how to change that. But that is something that can help you get you through things and get things to function for some people. That having been said, you get to spend your life not being happy, so it's not exactly something that you want to live with. The thing that it's hardest to do when you've got depression is take advantage of opportunities, because like I said, you can only see the bad sides to things. You know, it's things like, if something gets thrust in front of you, then you might be able to take it, but nothing beyond the normal. So for example, if someone says, we're all going to the pub, would you like to come along? And you normally go to the pub with these people, then that doesn't feel like anything special, so you go along to the pub. I suppose maybe that's that sense of duty thing, or that normality that you can handle. But if you wouldn't go up to a group, if a group of people said, who you didn't know said, come along, you'd feel like you're imposing, and you wouldn't see, maybe they want to be my friend, or we could have a good time. You'd only see the list that says, what if I'm imposing? They're probably just doing this just because they feel guilty, and this is a sacrifice they're going to take for someone else, and I wouldn't want to impose on them. And there's a chance that I might not like these people, and all of those things are all you can see, so you can't see the positive sides. You wouldn't, again, would say, hey, to all of your friends, hey, let's go out for a drink, if it wasn't somewhere that you normally, you know, if you drank on Fridays and it was a Wednesday and Friday seemed just a little bit too far away, and you needed to, as I say, don that mask to stop yourself from dropping any further, you wouldn't say, hey, let's have a drink, because you wouldn't want to impose. Why should everyone change themselves for you if you have a low opinion of yourself at the time? That's not going to happen. So those are sort of definite stopping you from doing things, and particularly sort of things being creative where you're driving things are almost impossible. So the obvious question, if you're someone out there who's going, oh yes, I've got all of these feelings, how do I fight it? And the answer is, first answer is, 12 years, still haven't gotten over it, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask. But I suppose drugs would be the first answer. There is medication you can take to help handle these things. I have never tried any of them, so I cannot talk to their effectiveness, but I know people who have tried and found it very useful. As an artist, I suppose there's a level of pain that you have to go through to help create you, which I have felt that it was in some way a learning experience. And then also, I myself am concerned that when I'm in those situations, I feel that I can't do anything for myself, and therefore the knowledge that I can sometimes fight out my way out of it without the need of anything else is an important knowledge, again, on that sort of, truth. Or I suppose Harry Potter casting the Petronas at the end of 3, where he knows that he can do it, therefore he casts his perfect Petronas. And it is that knowledge that I sort of cling to, and that I feel that if I ever went to drugs, even though it would make my life easier, that if I was ever to slip and not have access to the drugs, or the drugs were to stop working, I would never be able to dig myself out of it, and I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So that's why I haven't done it. But if you go for it, I think that's probably a good thing. Go talk to a doctor. It's probably not a bad idea. I suppose talk to some sort of therapists. I suppose that's what I'm doing by talking to you. Maybe not. I don't know. The other option, the option that I prefer, is the Petronas spell. Expecto Patronum! Yes, you see, the thing is that obviously it's not about saying the words or waving a wand. What's important is that you're supposed to focus on something that's happy. And just as in Harry Potter cases, that can be something from your past. It can be something, if you have something particularly bright right in front of your nose, and the thing that I specialise in is in imagining a nice, bright, happy future and focusing on that. So this is my method for getting over depression. The first thing is, as said before, you can actually get some small temporary happiness while still being depressed. The thing is that it will go pretty quickly. So find things that will bring you happiness. Now that's different for different people. For some people it's being active, for some people it's being around positive people. There's certainly an element of that even for myself. Part of my depression levels have gone down because I now live with Dan, who, as you no doubt know, is incredibly happy, but my dad was also depressive, as I said, who regularly brought me down. So being here is in a more positive situation generally brings my happiness levels higher. Again, for me in particular, it's watching movies, it's watching good TV, and of course watching YouTube videos. In fact, the reason I'm making this video is because I managed to get the right sort of oomph after watching a Mika Kitty video about her dealing with things. I'll try and put a box here with a link to her video. Yes, so she was talking about dealing with her depression and anxiety, and so I thought I wanted to make something similar. And as I'm currently in the middle of breaking through, that's really good, so I thought I could do that. So that was the boost that got me to a point where I could actually do something. The next point is you actually have to do something. In this particular case, I'm making this video. This is part of my breakthrough, because the thing is there are things that make us happy and stop us from being depressed. But you've actually got to go out and do them. And as I said before, you know, when you're depressed, it's very hard to go out and do these things. I was thinking about making this video for a bit while I was in the middle of my depression, and I never got round to doing it. I needed that boost before I could actually make the video, because you can't do it by yourself. The always thinking everything's bad, it's very bad for self-motivation. You can't lead the assault. You can piggyback on other people, but you can't be the person running at the front, because being the person at the front needs to have a belief that you're better than other people, or not necessarily that you're better than other people, but you have a better idea, or you've got something that it's worth people following you for. It's worth you listening to me. And I can't say that when I'm in the middle of a depression and thinking, I'm just going to waste your time. And you have to be in that situation where you can go, no, you know what, I got something out of that, therefore I can give something. And I don't know what those positive things are for you. For me, it's making videos, it's writing stories, it's actually getting a move onto things really helps me just be positive and actually slows down the acceleration. So rather than the momentum, this is about stopping the deacceleration, about lowering your level of depression, hopefully to zero. Now, it's one of these things that boost, and once you allows you some momentum on moving forwards, but you've got to keep that momentum, which is why straight after this video, after I've recorded it, I'm going to sit down with Dan and we're going to come up with a list of things of where do I want to be, set myself some deadlines and get myself to move, because actually maintaining this momentum as long as possible is what's important, because as soon as I start letting it slide, there's a reasonable chance I will slide back into the depression, particularly early on, less so as I go through. As I go through, it will become easier. Like I said, I know this sometimes from cases where I've got over these things, but I also know that it's going to be hard, so I'm definitely going to need that focus and to keep track of where I am and where things are. Now, before I end this video, I'd like to talk to all of you who think that you might have a friend who is suffering from depression, because there are a few things where you're probably there thinking, how can I help them? And the honest truth is I can't tell you, because it's different for different people. Early on, if you do think there's something up, there's possibly things like mentioning that you know that there's this thing called depression if they don't know what it is, and maybe telling them to go and talk to a psychiatrist or a doctor is possibly a good thing. But other than that, there really are very few right answers. Chances are the answer is probably nothing. I can assure you I've got a supportive family and Dan wants to help all of the time, but often he can't. Things that I would say that are definitely helpful is being there so that you don't lose momentum once you get to that point. It's very important to understand that that buzz that you get that makes you do things can last only a few hours. In fact, if it lasts more than about 3 hours, is quite a rarity for me. Unless you really keep it going, and you really have to work to keep it going. And it can take you a month before you find something else that will give you that buzz again. So when someone's got it and they say, let's go with something, be there and be ready to jump on things as quickly as possible and really be there to help support that movement and keep that going forwards. There are two things I'd like to say that you definitely shouldn't do. The first one is depressives don't need to hit rock bottom before they can start building themselves up. That's generally something more true of addictions. So don't push pressure on. And in fact, even casually pushing pressure on can be a huge detrimental. You might just say something like, hey, didn't you say you were going to do something? But all they hear is, you didn't do something and a better person would have done it, and that's why you're an awful human being. And I know that's not what you meant, but that's what they're going to hear, or at least it's what I would hear when I'm in a big depression state. So try and be supportive, and if you know that it's something that they've been told once before, don't push it. And if they make a comment that says, I've understood it, move on quickly. Don't dwell on the matter, so that they don't have to dwell on the matter. I think that's very important, and certainly something that I found, you crumble easily. The second piece of advice, the second thing that I feel that you shouldn't do, is you shouldn't be afraid to bring it up. I don't know if this is just me, because I am a person who's much more open than others, but I'm generally rarely met people who are depressed who won't talk about it if prompted. They're probably not going to tell you, that they've been crying for the last month every time they're alone, but they will tell you that they're under the weather or how it's going, and having people to keep in touch with and to keep monitoring it can be something that's really helpful. You see, the thing is that, remember when I said they're judges of happiness? Because even though how much you care about them is much more than the amount you'll be annoyed at not getting to talk about football or fashion or whatever it is you normally talk about. So even though, as far as you're concerned, you're clearly much more interested about their health, they won't see this positive side and will just see the negative. And if they only see this negative side, they're not going to bring up the subject. They will almost definitely never bring up the subject unless they're not depressed. So it's worth bringing it up. If they've said they don't want to talk about it, don't push it. But it is something that I think that you shouldn't be afraid to bring up, and don't ever feel that if they wanted to talk about it, they will bring it up. When you're in the middle of depression, you never bring anything up because you feel like something very unimportant compared to everyone else. Yes, so I'm going to try and fight this, and hopefully that means more videos and me being more active and actually doing stuff. Hopefully this is positive news for me, and I hope that this gave something to you. Like I said, I came to this video because I just watched a Mika Kitty video, so I hope that maybe this inspires someone else equally to go out and do things. And if not, maybe it gives you some education, or maybe just, teaches you a little bit more about me. But that's a very big part of who I am. And I suppose, if you want to know me, that's an important piece of the jigsaw. So, yes, write comments, I don't know, do stuff, have fun, be happy. Bye!